You're listening to Fictron, the alternative fiction portal. Today we'll be looking at the bizarre media phenomenon that took YouTube by storm known as GoAnimate, or more specifically, the grounded videos. We'll also examine various parallels between creating digital media and the act of playing, as well as how it relates to our own childhood experiences. Be sure to like and subscribe, and stay tuned for a special interview with GoTube, a prolific member of the GoAnimate community, which will be posted tomorrow from this video's release. Now without further ado, let's get alternative.
Once upon a time our teacher said, "You never break the rules that we define." But times are changing now, let's look ahead. It's time for us to read between the lines.
Hey, what's up guys? My name is Bela Ogier, and if my voice sounds a little weird today, it's because I'm sick, but I prefer to think of it as performance art.
My name is Peter Daniel Berg, you can call me PDB, and today I am nasty.
My name is IZZY, and I am grounded.
So today we're going to talk about something that's very niche. This is easily the most niche thing we've talked about on the podcast so far, by far, right? We're going to talk about GoAnimate, and we're going to talk about the actual software, the company, and the community that now surrounds it. So, back in 2007, GoAnimate was founded by Alvin Hung with the goal of democratizing animation, making it accessible for everyone. And so GoAnimate works like a drag-and-drop software, much like a website builder, where you have preset assets, but instead of for like web themes, it's like you have preset assets for characters running, jumping, and doing all sorts of actions and such. So it's all pre-animated already, so you don't actually have to know how to draw or animate yourself. You can just select characters, change assets on the fly, and accessorize them however you like, and basically tell a story like that. And so that was the company's original goal, to democratize animation, make it available to anyone regardless whether they knew how to animate or not. So in subsequent years, I guess around 2010, 2011, more people started using GoAnimate as a way to create these very surreal kind of videos featuring characters from many television shows, most notably Caillou, and some strange genres of videos emerged from this, and it became a whole phenomenon on YouTube that really exploded and got really big, relatively speaking, in 2016. And that's about when I first discovered these videos. I saw a video titled Caillou misbehaves at Pizza Hut and gets grounded, and I was very intrigued by the thumbnail, you know, with these like weird stock-looking character assets, basically. And I clicked on it, and I was just absolutely amazed by it. I was so intrigued by this because it was like nothing I'd ever seen before, and I didn't know what to make of it. And so I just became fascinated with it since then. I started watching all these Caillou gets grounded videos, right, which involve Caillou, the character Caillou from the show, misbehaving and getting into trouble, and then subsequently getting punished at the end of the episodes. But it's all done in this GoAnimate software, and it's all like custom made, and there's like weird text-to-speech voices, and the animations and videos are often like kind of silly and juvenile and crazy.
You could think of it as a more professional Bitmoji type of software, and that's going to come up later in the episode. But it's one of those business-oriented animation software packages that accidentally got co-opted for a completely unintended use case.
Yes, and in this case, that unintended use turned out to be one of the most weirdly niche, weirdly specific things imaginable.
Yeah, it strikes me as pretty similar to YouTube poop.
It is a lot like YouTube poop, yes. And I did actually find a GoAnimate video once that was like, it was a GoAnimate version of a Caillou YouTube poop, like beat by beat. And I mean, people have made a lot of stuff in GoAnimate besides just this Caillou stuff, of course. Izzy, you brought up the Grandma Got Run Over by a Reindeer movie, completely recreated in GoAnimate.
Oh,
right?
Really? Now?
Yeah, not only completely redone, but sort of made into its own thing. Like, my thing really with GoAnimate and GoAnimate content is that it's very personalized, and it's very much like playing with action figures in your room. Like, by taking these characters from already very popular content and just turning it into your own thing, which is mainly, well, when they said for everybody, I don't think they really accounted for school-aged children to be playing with the software.
Yeah.
Which ultimately, like, became, I think, like, the prime audience and core, like, user base for GoAnimate.
Definitely. If you watch these videos, it's very clear that most of them are made by like middle school, high school age children. There's something very playful but very juvenile about them. Not in like a bad way though. Like it's very much an acquired taste kind of media, but if you're the right kind of person, you will find these videos thoroughly hilarious and entertaining, and I have enjoyed them for many years now.
Yeah. The contrast, I would say, with, say, YouTube Poops is that YouTube Poops are primarily remix content of existing content. And you can only work with what you have from the, say, show you're working on. If you make a YouTube Poop of a Caillou episode, you only have basically what was in the episode. You have to scrounge together the other content if you want to add more. With GoAnimate, you have text-to-speech. You have a base to work with, but you're making the content much more from scratch. You're not working off of clips of Caillou's voice actor. You can write an original script entirely. It sort of fills the same niche appeal of, and I would say this isn't actually niche appeal, but say with Fortnite having every intellectual property's characters in it, and this whole talk lately of metaverses essentially being an omni-conglomeration of intellectual property so that everything is a crossover episode with everything else.
Oh yeah,
It strikes me as very similar because kids don't care what franchises the toys they play with are from. They'll knock together two action figures and make them fight each other, and it doesn't matter, like one's a Bionicle and one's a Transformer, it doesn't really matter. And so that's the same thing I see in Fortnite and other different attempts at metaverses, whether they have, Marvel versus Capcom, for example, is a similar thing, where you have just no attention to the sanctity of the story of the universe. It just dumbs everything down to the same level, and then you can have Mega Man and Doctor Strange fighting each other.
Yeah, I mean, kids love crossovers.
Exactly.
Like crossovers, kids always love crossovers. I loved crossovers as a kid.
Exactly. The Jimmy Timmy Power Hour.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of. Oh, I wonder if someone's made a GoAnimate version of the Jimmy Timmy Power Hour.
I'm on it, hang on.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying is that GoAnimate allows you, to make a long story short, it allows you to combine characters in ways that just remixing existing content doesn't.
And it's like, in addition to that, you also could make, like a lot of people did apparently make, like OCs and like just basically self-inserts, characters, just random characters back in the day to put in GoAnimate as well as these off-brand characters. And I've noticed like a large presence of characters that have become specific to GoAnimate, like Boris the Teeth Guy, who is the GoAnimate version of Caillou's dad, but with red, angry skin and like a massive mouth that's like scaled up to like the maximum size, so it goes outside the boundaries of his face.
That's what that dude
and
was.
like other and like other
The name alone is killing me. Boris the Teeth Guy?
Yeah.
Boris the Teeth Guy.
And then there's like Dayu, who's like Caillou, but with a red shirt for some reason. I don't really know the significance.
Like he's evil? Like Shadow the Hedgehog, but Caillou.
It's his multiple brothers. There is lore. We learned this in Grandma Got Run Over by a Reindeer, the GoAnimate version. There is lore that Caillou has like 11 brothers.
Shadow the Caillou.
Yes.
But that's a lot like how there were so many like Homestar Runner OCs who were just said to be Homestar's brother or whatever.
Yeah. It's very easy.
And the lore, of course, is not necessarily, it doesn't like necessarily all exist in the same universe, because of course several, probably tens of thousands of people make these, right? But even though that's the case, it's still kind of treated as though it were a single contained extended universe.
Yeah.
It's like this interesting kind of threshold like between those two.
Well, yeah, it's like, I think I mentioned it in a previous episode. My take is that the more collaborative a canon is, the less canon any one element is. But it's interesting to see, like, multiple groups. It's kind of like the different canons in the SCP Foundation.
Yeah. And see, like, I like stuff like that, because I find it fascinating when, like canon sort of stops being a set-in-stone thing, and it starts to become this more, like, malleable range of different thresholds, like, with which to judge it. Something about just the absolute insanity of how big it gets that it, like, sort of collapses in on itself. I just find it's such a spectacle, and I just thoroughly enjoy it.
Exactly. It seems like there's a lot of people who look for continuity and lore where there isn't any. But then again, people are creating continuity and lore when they create anything at all. It seems to be the natural tendency for people who are just creating in a vacuum and posting it online.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, this GoAnimate, Caillou gets grounded stuff definitely embodies kind of an episodic formula. There's no continuity whatsoever between most of these videos.
Yeah, exactly.
Of course, not just by virtue of being made by several different creators, but like even a lot of creators on the same channel like don't have continuity between their own like episodes.
Exactly, and it doesn't need to be. Things can be one-off gags.
Exactly. Like, even back to the toy analogy, you don't really have, like, consistent plots. At least I'd never used to. There would always just be, like, one particular scenario for a day, and then I'd forget that completely, like, the following, and then start over with something completely new. It's very much a similar thing.
Yeah. You know what? I would do the same thing, except instead of, it wasn't always with toys though, but I would like role play scenarios in my imagination.
Yeah.
But I would be stuck on like one particular scenario for maybe like a couple weeks at a time.
Oh, for sure.
Or like a week, and then change it up. So I would have like these different weird arcs that had nothing to do with each other for the most part.
Yeah, exactly. Like, from like 2nd to 4th grade, my friends and I on the playground would have the same sort of thing with our pretend play, and it was basically, I think the most persistent scenario was like stuck on alien planets and trying to get to the next one. And so we'd be, describing the aliens we were seeing or whatever, and we'd come up with random superpowers on the fly and didn't forget about them.
Like JoJo.
Well, yeah, exactly. So it's like 1 week I would have, the power of Big Fist or whatever. Like Kendo from My Hero. Isn't that her name?
I've never watched it.
She can make her hands really big, basically. But I think I was thinking of Stinko Man level 4, where he has the Big Fist power up. But in any case, the next week it would be like, what was that? I don't remember, because the weekend is like 2 whole days. I can't be expected to remember something we did for fun over 2 days of break.
Yeah.
It's like the next week, then we come back to the next season, and everything's reset.
It's a whole new plot.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very much how these GoAnimate videos flow. And like, with regards especially to this idea of like a kid playing with toys as an analogy for like having the different characters coming together, I feel like it's also very much like a kid playing with toys just in the usage of the software in and of itself.
Yes.
I talked about this with you, Peter. I might have talked about it with you, Izzy, as well before. It reminded me of being a kid and playing with kid pics, and I would make these slideshow like still images with text-to-speech, sort of in the same vein of GoAnimate. I made this series called Agent 123 about like a secret agent who went on like weird, wild adventures and antics. I think it's lost media at this point, sadly, but if I do manage to find it, I will post it. Probably not on the Fictron channel, but I'll post it somewhere. I promise. But yeah, so back in those days when I would do that, I would always say, oh yeah, I'm going to go play kid pics. It's like when you're a kid, I feel like specifically digital art ventures are interpreted as play by kids because like they've grown up with video games. I have to assume that that's the reason why.
No, I think it's because it maps more closely to the experience of other play than it does to using a computer program. It's the same way as how when you remember things you've done in a video game, you're not remembering everything from moment to moment. You're remembering events generally the way you would remember real-life events because the interactive nature of it tracks more closely to how you interact with your real life. So it's not like, oh, I went into the door and there were 3 enemies there and I shot each one of them in succession. You're remembering the more specific events of like, oh, it was a crazy firefight and I just managed to get that guy. You're remembering the emotional peaks. So I think that using the software is described by the kid as play, most specifically because it is playing, not because of video games.
Well, the thing that I just wonder, though, when I think back to like being a kid and in that space, I don't remember thinking of any other kind of art as playing. Like if I would paint something in like art class or something, I didn't think of that as playing, but I did think of like digital art as playing.
Okay.
And so I'm not sure where it separates in that regard, but for whatever reason it does.
That's a good point. Okay.
Well, I think it's because these sorts of, I guess, programs are something that's like flashy and already has like colors and like new things associated with it. So you don't inherently feel like it's actually physical work. It's similar to like how kids would use Flipnote Haneta. I still don't know if I'm saying that right. Hatena, but that animation software and it being included on like video game consoles, I think that was more inclined to have children like sort of play with it, as it is also like animation software, as opposed to like just simply drawing something on your DS.
Yeah.
It's the moving parts.
I guess that's a good, is like oftentimes these, especially kid pics, is like the interface, the UI itself is designed in kind of a more playful way than something like, say, Photoshop.
Yeah, it's got this blobject feel to it, like the, old chunky fruity IMAX, you know what I mean? It feels like a Chumby or something, or I forget the name of it, but the whole interface itself feels like an I Spy game.
Right, and GoAnimate is considerably more sort of polished than that, like in that regard.
You've actually played with the software. I was curious, how user-friendly is it to go with?
I would say, I think it's user-friendly enough, right? Because, of course, kids use it, and, when I was playing around with it, I was like, okay, yeah, I can see how it works. It's a little annoying, honestly. Like, I feel like it could be better in many ways, but I think it's tolerable. Like, it's not, I've definitely used far, far worse, like, drag and drop type of interfaces. So overall, I would say it's okay.
Frustrating, but, like, works just well enough
Yes.
to get, like, 12-year-olds to figure out the software.
Exactly. You can still do a lot, even just knowing a very bare bones, like, limited amount of GoAnimate. You can still do quite a lot with it, I feel.
Yeah. And that's because it's a tool set, more so than it is an instruction book on how to do things. It's a way to do things.
The GoAnimate software, by the way, back in the day, ran on Flash. It ran on Adobe Flash. So it was like a animation making software running in a software that's already used for making animation.
Yeah. Well, in a sense, that kind of makes sense. Like, that's the way I would do it if I were told to make it.
Exactly.
It's the same thing as all those character creators and dress-up dolls.
All those dress-up games.
Yes, exactly.
I was just gonna
It's
say.
like a dress-up game that also makes the characters move, and in that way, it also reminds me of the interface development kit that you could use for World, the MMO I mentioned in a previous episode, where you could make your own avatars in Flash using a kit provided by the developers, and then upload them and sell them. And it would let you rig up animations, and then you could select them from a drop-down menu when you right-clicked on your character. And doing all of that with the IDK is very similar to the way that GoAnimate handles character animation. Because it's all basically the puppet method. It's a puppet made of sticks, and you have the objects for the limbs tracked onto the sticks.
Yes, it very much operates in the same way that a lot of those like Flash dress-up games did.
Yep.
And again, we mentioned Bitmoji. I feel like GoAnimate is a precursor to Bitmoji in many ways, and a lot of these other like character customization type apps and like widgets that you see nowadays.
The very soulless look, yeah. Corporate art style.
But it's slightly different from the corporate art style, because the corporate art style is very flat shaded, and this has
Only in some of them.
That's fair. That's fair. I'm thinking of the flat shaded kind when I think of corporate art style, but there definitely is the other branch of it, which is much more like Xbox Live avatars or Second Life, or
I think GoAnimate is closer to the Xbox Live avatar.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
It looks like knockoff Family Guy in a lot of ways, and I think that was intentional.
The thing I think we are forgetting, one of the most interesting things to it to me is the very wide variety of, like, equally bland characters that you can create with GoAnimate, because it's not only the pseudo Family Guy style. There's also the, like Peter has said, like the lineless sort of, like, when you think of corporate art styles, this is what it is. There's many, many of these.
The different themes. In the GoAnimate software, they call them themes, and the one...
Oh, they do. Oh, is that what that means?
I thought theme meant like the interface, like the UI.
I thought,
no,
I
not at all.
Backgrounds for some reason.
So they have the cartoony theme is called Comedy World, and that's by far the one that the vast majority of GoAnimators use, because that's like kind of the one that's become the most iconic. But they do sometimes branch out and use the other ones, like Lil Peeps, which is this like chibi looking one, and there's a couple others, I believe. But
that's so funny, because I was watching like a very meta like GoAnimate episode based around like the GoAnimate YouTubers, and they did mention like all of these things, but as like sort of someone out of context, hearing the name Lil Peep
it makes me think of that deep fried rapper.
Yeah, him.
He's like the human version of a deep fried meme.
The skinny Post Malone that
exactly.
Get mad at me
my
for saying,
god,
Post Macaron. So I just found the Little Peep style. It looks like frickin' Rayman.
It is like Raymond.
They got the floating hands and feet.
I need to make a little peep edit of it. I have to.
Little peeps. Yeah, you could do it with the actual software.
Oh God, you're right.
You should.
I don't know enough about Goth Boy Click. Oh my God, even the like clothing and like eyes stylistically look like a little bit more like alternative comparatively to the rest of GoAnimate. So it definitely looks.
Do you mean like the clothing assets and stuff?
Yeah, the clothing assets, which I'm sure could be like changed out, but it looks like inherently somehow more alternative than the Family Guy version.
Alternative? What do you mean?
Like, you know, alternative fashion, like more.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Yeah.
You're listening to Fashtron, the alternative fashion portal.
Oh no.
I could.
That is so
God,
not fetch.
Oh God.
So, of course, like I mentioned that Caillou is by far the character to appear in most of these videos. He's become like an icon, basically, in the GoAnimate community. I want to talk a little bit about Caillou as a source material. So Caillou is a well-known children's TV show that has sort of gained infamy over the years. And on the show, Caillou is very characterized by sort of having bratty, spoiled behavior, and his parents really not doing all that much to reprimand him. So he gained like this sort of very strong hate-dom over the years. I should say now, I had an amazing opportunity to actually interview a very prolific GoAnimator in the community named Luke, whose channel is GoTube, and I was able to ask him a lot of questions about the GoAnimate community and GoAnimate as a software. And so apparently a lot of people had been making these grounded videos long before the Caillou Gets Grounded one specifically came out, and they were people grounding their parents and like having basically self-insert OCs in place of Caillou. And so that was what was there originally.
Yeah, my favorite part in Groundius was when he shouted, "It's grounding time," and then he grounded all those people.
Jesus. God damn it.
I want you dead.
Teleports behind you, nothing personnel, kid.
God.
African Vulture was the first person in the community to use Caillou specifically in GoAnimate grounded videos. And because Caillou's already so hated in general, it makes sense. It makes perfect sense for Caillou to be like the ideal stand-in, shoehorn-in for these grounding videos.
Yeah, so the format of the genre essentially latched on to the perfect character for the genre.
So I want to talk about the genre and the subgenres a bit, but first I want to briefly mention, like when I think about the fact that Caillou was originally a book, I have to wonder if the author is familiar with the GoAnimate stuff at all, or has seen it, or like what she would think if she saw it. Like I just have to wonder that.
I'd like to think she's blissfully unaware.
Probably.
In a senior home somewhere.
It's just the GoAnimate stuff is so completely removed from the original context Caillou was created in, and on so many different levels that like you probably couldn't even list in the time of the podcast.
Right.
Oh yeah. So the book was written by Christine Leroux, and illustrated by Helene Despoteau.
Yeah.
It's from Quebec.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
Okay, so Canada's Canada. Good job. So, yeah, I guess it's just as removed from the original authorship as ironic Shrek fandom is from William Steig.
Oh, yeah, that's actually a perfect comparison.
Like, do you think William Steig cares about All-Star remixes? I don't know if they're on his radar at all. I wouldn't know.
See, because I feel like if something like of mine blew up to that insane degree and then started getting, remixed and re-remixed to unrecognizable points, I feel like I might honestly be into it. I'd be like, oh, wow, I can't believe this is happening. There's something very...
But it would be, years at... picture you're, 100 years old. And these, whichever, teenage generation is, that at that point. It's all these jokes that you are not necessarily never going to understand, but just, aren't really that funny to you.
Well, it's not that...
Because you don't have the prior context for them.
Yeah.
It's not a matter of it being funny or not having a context. There's something, morbidly fascinating to me about, media you create becoming sort of, bigger than itself or you.
Exactly.
Like a little cult following, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it turns out that William Steig died in 2003, God rest his soul. He lived long enough to see the movie, And when asked about his opinion, he said, "It's vulgar, it's disgusting, and I loved it."
Yeah!
It's vulgar, it's disgusting, and I loved it, he said.
It's perfect! It's what he set out to do.
You know what? I think that if he were alive today, he would like the All-Star remixes.
He would love the All-Star remixes.
Exactly. So these Caillou GoAnimate videos have 4 subgenres that I've been able to pin down. There are the grounded videos in which Caillou is shown misbehaving or acting naughty or, doing some bratty thing and being grounded by his parents or by someone else at the end, and usually being grounded for some absurd number of years. There are the ungrounded videos in which Caillou spends an episode behaving or saving the day or doing something noble, and a previously implied, again, there's no explicit continuity in these videos for the most part, but an implied previous punishment is lifted at the end of the ungrounded episode. There are the punishment day episodes, which are basically just an onslaught of Caillou being tormented throughout the episode for, again, a previously implied wrongdoing. And the ones that break the formula the most are the behavior card day videos, which are a series of characters, either GoAnimate exclusive characters or characters that originated from other pre-existing IPs, but they're given different colored cards corresponding to different punishments or rewards of different levels depending on how good or bad they'd been, and it's in a school setting. So those are the 4 major genres of GoAnimate video that I've come across.
Well, yeah, if you're gonna make a crossover episode for all your favorite characters, and you are currently in 7th grade or something, what's the ideal setting? Well, of course it's going to be a school.
Yes.
Where else is a kid gonna put his characters in a crossover? And do schools actually do behavior
That's
card
the thing.
day?
I don't
feels
know.
Like this seems like it must be a pre-existing phenomenon that was translated to the format.
I was wondering the same thing, and I wish I had asked Luke that question.
It seems like it's a bit too complex of a format for a kid to come up with on their own.
I don't think so. I could definitely see a kid just taking report card day and even if they were I guess had trouble with oh Jesus. Even if they had I guess behavioral issues that they were constantly reprimanded with, I feel they could easily combine those concepts with oh, I will let everybody in my class get judgment.
Oh, yeah.
And not just me.
There's definitely something about some of the videos do kind of have this feeling of it feels kind of it's someone lashing out and venting their frustrations. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm glad that the kids dealing with this stuff have GoAnimate as a means to vent their frustration about this stuff. But those videos that are more lashing out and kind of a little more mean-spirited are the ones I probably enjoy watching the least, because there's less sort of, it's less absurd and more just kind of outright mean in a lot of ways,
There's evil in them.
Yeah, there's less universal appeal to it.
Yeah.
Because it's too specific to be relatable.
They didn't make these videos for you. They made them for themselves.
It's some of them are a bit less enjoyable to me for that reason.
For sure.
And, it's very interesting, and I talked with Luke about this in the interview I did as well, because, these ungrounded videos, apparently they started popping up in part because people basically started to feel bad for Caillou after getting so many punishments. So it's you have multiple levels of removal here, where you have, it's you have the GoAnimate Caillou, who is removed from the television show Caillou, and who is regularly used as an easy target because he's such a widely hated cartoon.
The archetype of misbehavior.
Yes. But then you have people who maybe aren't as familiar with the show Caillou, but do watch the GoAnimate videos and have none of that original context to go by. So they just see Caillou, getting punished regularly and start to feel bad from him. And so apparently there is a large vocal minority in the GoAnimate community who are apparently called Caillou fanboys, who feel really bad for Caillou and don't like the grounded videos. So for this reason, a lot of people just started making ungrounded videos. And so Caillou basically inadvertently became a sympathetic character in this context.
I do like that there is new invention and innovation that has to necessarily come up with the second generation who haven't seen the original stuff.
Right.
Because that it's always interesting to see, people removed from the original source, how do they reinterpret or misinterpret the product of the first people who've seen it? That part is the really interesting part to me.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like what you said in the pilot episode with The Simpsons, how like the best season of The Simpsons were considered to be like 5 or 6 around that time.
Exactly. The second generation of writers were able to expand on the characters. And actually, yeah, that's a pretty good parallel for what happened here with Caillou. Because, like, is it even the same character? And it's kind of like the ship of Theseus, you know?
Yes, I agree, yes. It's like very much its own version of Caillou.
Yeah, like if you take Caillou out of the book, you put him in the TV show, but then you take him out of the TV show and you put him in grounded videos, and then you put him in ungrounded videos, is it still the same Caillou from the book?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Hang on a second. What are you doing here? Wait, no, don't touch that!
You like anime?
Caillou. How dare you interrupt our podcast by turning us into GoAnimate characters?
Peter, Izzy, we should ground Caillou. He single-handedly disrupted this podcast, all by himself. It definitely has nothing whatsoever to do with me wanting a GoAnimate segment.
No please. I've been grounded so many times in the past that I've become allergic. If you ground me now I'll have an allergic reaction.
You know, for someone who is constantly grounded, as they say, you sure seem to never actually learn your lesson, which I suppose is part of the episodic nature of.
Save it for the episode, Peter.
I don't know guys, this is kinda amazing, LMIO. It just made me look like some genie or gasp goth girl. I'm dead. The limiting aesthetic of this software is actually really funny.
Fair enough, but I don't know how good a medium it is for a podcast, so I say we ground Caillou and get things back to normal.
Right, okay, back to being angry. Caillou. You are grounded. I'm sorry, but I can't say that with a straight face, haha. You are grounded for Graham's number of years. Go to your room now.
And take this Swiss cheese with you.
Okay, we dealt with that. We got rid of Caillou. Thank goodness. I'm sorry. I know some people say he, has had enough punishments, but I'm sorry. He can really still be rotten sometimes, okay? Okay.
What an ugly, foul, awful, vile little child.
Okay, so awkward segue into that aside. Let's keep
grounded.
Yeah, so that's perfect, because I did want to talk about some of the, GoAnimate style of humor and the way it kind of works. So, because of the way that GoAnimate does tend to be very stiff with the animation sequences and, the way things are clipped together beside one another, it tends to be you get these sort of long, awkward pauses, and of course you get mispronunciation in the text-to-speech voices sometimes.
My Rafflecopter goes swa, 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 swa,
Exactly.
Crow's nest.
But it's these pauses are also, I feel like they're not long enough to be, super obvious. They'll do a joke in, a show or a movie or something where there's, a really long pause to the point where it's, uncomfortable and noticeable. But I feel like the pauses in GoAnimate between characters speaking, that's just a natural sort of result of how the software is. I feel like it's not long enough to be uncomfortable or even really noticeable, but it's long enough to be really awkward in this nuanced way. It kind of reminds me of the way Napoleon Dynamite would do the same thing. The way Napoleon Dynamite sort of holds on a shot for just a little too long, but not quite long enough that you, notice it. It's very subtle like that.
I can understand what you mean, yeah.
Sort of the uncanny valley of speech, in a way.
Yeah, holding a shot.
And so my favorite jokes in GoAnimate tend to be these ones that use this strange pacing to their advantage. So it'll be a really long build up and then a short awkward pause and then a punchline delivered.
Like a feg hoot?
Yes, a lot like a feg hoot, yes. Like, one thing they'll do a lot is when they have Caillou grounded, his parents are like in the text-to-speech voice, they're like, Caillou, 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 how dare you do whatever? You are grounded for 517394352, and it's just number pasta. It'll go on for like a minute sometimes, right? Of just number pasta saying how many years or millenniums he's grounded for. And then they'll say years, and it's just like, go to your room now. And so my favorite joke I've ever seen in any GoAnimate video was a Dora and Caillou get grounded video. And so it was like Dora's parents are like, Dora, you are grounded for blah, blah, however many years. And it goes on for like a minute, right? And then there's that brief pause. And then Caillou's dad is just like, Caillou, you are grounded twice as long as Dora. It's like, that's such a good way to like deliver like it's like already such an absurd number, but you're conveying an even more absurd number right after in a fraction of the time.
Exactly. It would be a lot less funny in a certain way if it was just the same number doubled through the calculator and then number pasta.
Exactly.
They could have done that, and it would have been expected, but this is the funnier option.
Yes, so that's what I think is the kind of humor that works best in these videos, are like really long build-ups, brief awkward pause, and then snappy quick punchline.
Yeah, makes sense to me. I do like Shaggy Dog stories like that. Not so much, like, sometimes you're just waiting for the punchline to come because the pun is already obvious. Like, I've heard enough plays on words in my day to know when the punchline is going to be kicks are for trids, which I hate that one because you have to invent what a trid is in the setup in order for the punchline to make sense. Just come up with a new spoonerism, please.
It's like you're just like waiting on death row for the
exactly. That's yeah. Or it's like when you're watching the Truman Show and you're just waiting for the other shoe to drop and for him to realize what's going on. Like the Truman Show is a Shaggy Dog story. So, when you've heard that, like, kicks are for trids, or, better Nate than Lever. And it's like, you already know if you hear a character named Nate, and there's also a Lever mentioned, your brain can kind of do the math in between, and then the rest is just filler. It's like solving a mystery from the first page. So, I do like these drawn-out, awful jokes, when it's not so much a pun, but just, how do you say this?
It like wastes your time, and that's the joke.
Well, it wastes your time. It still has to resolve in a really funny way, but I prefer it when it's not a spoonerism or a pun.
Yeah.
I prefer it more when it's like a conceptual problem being resolved.
Yeah.
Caillou solves the trolley problem.
That's probably a video. That's probably a GoAnimate video.
And then the inside of the trolley is like the sad guy on one side and the happy guy on the other side.
They're both Caillou.
Yes, they're both Caillou. When you
one is grounded, one is ungrounded.
He just grounds the trolley. That's how he solves it. He just grounds the trolley.
Well,
now I'm thinking of other like weird philosophy stuff, like Schrodinger's Caillou. He both is and isn't grounded.
Caillou dreaming that he is a butterfly. Well, who breaks a butterfly upon a wheel? Like and share for more info.
Oh my god.
This is not a Caillou.
Ce n'est pas un Caillou.
Yeah.
Wait, that's so good, because Caillou was originally written in French.
Yeah, it's Québécois. Yeah. Ce n'est pas un Caillou.
Oh, that's so good. Oh my god. Oh my god. So, I think we've given a pretty thorough like explanation of what this GoAnimate stuff is and what it has been throughout the years. And so I feel like there's inevitably going to be people who are saying like, so what? Right? It's just some silly, dumb crap on the internet. Like, what is the point of analyzing it? Like, why are you giving it the time of day? I mean, to that, I'm just going to say there are like tens of thousands of these videos, and many of them have several millions of views. This is a relatively massive phenomenon in the grand scheme of thing, and I don't think you can just ignore something like that, no matter how like inane or silly it might be to the majority of people who see it. Like, there's clearly an appeal to these videos.
The videos are being made up to the current day.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. During research, I linked you to one that was like 33 minutes long, and it was uploaded yesterday.
Yeah, and probably by the time this comes out, there will be like a month's worth more.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that one alone had 10,000 views in one day.
Yeah, like it's still like somehow a very popular genre, even if it's not at its like peak anymore. I don't know, maybe there's like a resurgence. It's not something I've had the intent of keeping up on throughout the years.
Yeah.
That's a fair point.
There's also like the matter of nostalgia and how important nostalgia is. A lot of us look back on very early, for us, like early 2010s, late 2000s internet with these YouTube videos that were made combining different aspects of digital sites that we would often go on, like Club Penguin, Webkins, Neopets, like all these sort of like Frankensteined together, much like a GoAnimate, into like its own content.
It's mostly interesting to me that this is a genre of such enduring popularity, considering that even back in the day, to make a long story short, Bela sent us this video called Club Penguin versus RuneScape, which really, we should have recorded our live reaction to it, honestly. But it's this beautiful crystallization of this phenomenon of using internet media as playing with toys, as those two being the same thing. Because there's this moment in one... Bela, could you give some background on what exactly this was? It's like a YouTube series made in like 2008?
Yes, so Club Penguin versus RuneScape was a series made 2007, 2008, around that time. It was like this weird crossover story about a penguin from Club Penguin finding their way into the world of RuneScape. And of course, these are both video games we've talked about before. But so this penguin enters the world of RuneScape, basically, and a sort of ongoing feud starts between this penguin and the RuneScape character. Then towards the end, and like the last episode, I believe, there's this plot from the RuneScape character to turn a bunch of penguins into chocolate and like sell them as candy bars. And so the penguin recruits Willy Wonka, the Johnny Depp version of Willy Wonka, for help. Again, this also gives you an idea of when it was made.
Yeah.
But it's like not actually like, it's not just like a cutout of Willy Wonka from the movie. It's like a Mega Bloks version of Willy Wonka, like scaled up. And it's like, so with regards to going back to this whole idea of it being a kid playing with toys, it's like, it's like the
Quite
medium.
Literally a toy.
Yeah, it's literally a toy, and it's like it doesn't have to match stylistically. It can just be a representation of that character, and you see that in some of these grounded videos too, and like other Caillou videos with GoAnimate. You'll see like characters that are just like cutouts of like a person or a character from something that don't match the GoAnimate style at all. So
yeah, specifically like the grandma got run over by a reindeer.
Oh yeah.
One. Not like the reason I love that one so much is because of its like insistence on being very reliant on clip art.
Yeah.
And like outside sort of like very incongruent resources.
It also
like
it references the Nostalgia Critic's review of that same movie, which I thought was priceless.
Yeah, it's very self-referential. And I do want to say here that, like, even though I have referenced this being, like, a very popular software with kids, like, there are very much adults using this to, like, the most capacity, to, like,
Absolutely.
the most wonderful, like, comedy capacity possible.
Why does it look like Lapland? I don't get it. I don't get it. Because Lapland looks like the North Pole.
I know. Oh, that's so funny too, because there was like, you know, that's an Oni Plays reference, but like they've talked about Lapland in like another video as well.
Exactly.
Oh my god. Okay, I didn't know if you'd seen that one, but yeah. It's also like in the GoAnimate version of Grandma Got Run Over by a Reindeer, I saw another joke with that similar Shaggy Dog story Veghut like setup that also killed me. Now that I'm thinking about it, that one might have actually made me laugh harder than the like grounded twice as long one Punchline did. And this one was, there's a moment in the original movie, Grandma Got Run Over by a Reindeer. It's a really sort of stupid, silly movie, but
It's bad.
the cousin is trying to trick the grandfather into signing a deed to like a store that he owns, and she's like, go ahead and sign. He's like, sing? He's like, no, I said sign. He's like, I'd rather sing. And so he does the whole song then, right? And that's basically where it ends. It's just like he signs it after that, and that's that in the original movie. In the GoAnimate version, though, there's this brilliant bit that this actually made me laugh out loud very hard, and Izzy knows where I'm going with this. It was like, they do the whole thing. It's like, sing? No, sign. I'd rather sing. And he does the whole song, right? And then he signs it, and then she's like,
Now all you have to do is date the document.
I'd rather dance.
And she curses him out for like a solid minute.
it's so funny. It's such brilliant writing.
It means everything to me.
It's building on the original source material.
Yeah.
That's great.
And it's like actually a really, really good joke too. Like sometimes the humor comes from just how, bizarre and weird like the GoAnimate videos are, and like how just absurd they are. But sometimes it's like genuinely like funny humor.
Yeah.
We should talk about the company itself behind GoAnimate. I did some digging into the company, right? And of course, I did find this guy, Alvin Hung, as I said, who wanted to democratize animation, make it accessible to everyone. But over time, that did change. It was 2016 about when these GoAnimate videos, these grounded videos specifically, started getting really popular and like posted to YouTube. And it was sort of like the company itself was becoming kind of a laughing stock. And, Luke goes a lot more into that in the interview I did with him. And so they basically said, we're going to distance ourselves from this and just rebrand. And so they changed their name to Vyond, Vyond, in 2018 and got rid of all the like cartoony assets basically, so that it was more business oriented to be used for like corporate, like sleek, flat color type videos, because they wanted to distance themselves as much as possible from this. And so they completely got rid of all of that.
They were embarrassed by, they're a professional business company. It's like PowerPoint, if you think about it. It's not like they intend for it to have the professional veneer of PowerPoint or Microsoft Office, and it's being taken advantage of by the same sort of crowd who make, Friday Night Funkin' mods.
Yeah.
Or, it's like, imagine if Tom Fulp on Newgrounds had said, blood and gore, no, that wasn't the intended use of Flash. We're gonna, distance ourselves from the edgy stuff. Video game parodies, we don't want that.
Right, it's like instead of being, instead of having such an averse reaction to it, it's like maybe just be grateful that people have taken such a cult interest in your software.
Yeah, maybe wasn't Luke saying something about the website for GoAnimate itself being a sort of social media hub where you could upload your GoAnimate videos directly? So why not create a separate category for children's entertainment?
True.
Like I think that would have solved the issue very poetically succinctly, because then you could still have their professional stuff front and center, and they could still sell enterprise licenses to businesses.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't have to look at, Caillou getting counted on the front page of their website. But, so essentially they got embarrassed by the fact that, oh no, we made software for everyone, and now everyone's using it, and we didn't realize what that meant.
Exactly.
I believe they did have a school version at one point, but I think that was would have been heavily moderated by teachers to not
Probably
do that content.
Do you think the teachers are paid enough though?
No.
I believe the school version was actually the last we're going to get into how the software was preserved, of course, but I believe the school version was the last sort of respite for people to be using it
intended purpose
for with the Comedy World assets. Yeah. That was the last resource they had basically before they then nuked that eventually.
Yes, that makes sense.
And so a lot of people were downloading GoAnimate for schools without even being teachers or they're just the same kids.
The last bastion, the last refuge of the funny man.
Yeah.
The ecological collapse of the comedy world.
But yeah, so Peter, you brought up that GoAnimate did used to be a social media site, as Luke had told me. And I uncovered that myself actually I went on the Wayback Machine to see what GoAnimate used to look like. And yeah, it had a forum and a blog posts. That's where I found the statement by Alvin Hung about wanting to democratize animation. It just seemed a lot richer and more wholesome back in the day. And now it's they've gotten rid of the social media completely. It's just the software that costs something insane, I think the cheapest plan is like $50 a month to use it now, which is just ridiculous.
There's a similar software that came to mind, which I think is called Pechakucha. It's Japanese for chit-chat, apparently.
Ah, all right.
Pechakucha. So this is basically a presentation slideshow, online software. It's characterized most specifically by the way it zooms in and out of the different parts of the slideshow. So you'll have the first part of your slideshow is way over in one corner of like a big like food web concept map. Like when you were a kid and you'd have to outline your essay by putting the conceptual stuff relatedly like on a page, like a big web?
Yes.
Did your teachers ever do that? So it's like that, and then it zooms in on each one and zooms out. Like
we had
I remember those. Yeah,
this. It's like Prezi.
Yeah. Prezi. That's the one I think Prezi is the one I'm thinking of as well.
Yes.
Prezi and Pechakucha are basically the same thing. Maybe I'm mistaking one for the other because the one Prezi or Pechakucha presentation that popped off and got 10 million views or so was one called "What If Anything Is Big Bird," which was completely outside of the intended use case, which was for schools. I am thinking of Prezi. So I think someone did this as Prezi, but the pop-off outside the use case was an actual PhD scientist studying like the physiological and taxonomic classification of Big Bird. And concluding that it was a large flightless heron, not an 8-foot-tall canary, as previously assumed.
Oh my god.
I love that.
And so it's the one that got big, basically. Yeah, I would say that Prezi is a similar thing to
definitely
GoAnimate.
For sure. So, we said earlier in this episode that like there was just another GoAnimate video that Izzy saw that was like uploaded the other day and already has like 10,000 views, right? And so some of you listening now may be wondering, wait, but you said that they got rid of all those assets and rebranded to be more business-oriented. Well, now, what happened is because the GoAnimate community is so dedicated and so into this, right? It's like, right, like it's such a big part of what they do and what they love to do, right? That a group of coders from the GoAnimate community were able to successfully rip an earlier version of the GoAnimate software during the shift from GoAnimate to Beyond, and they created these, as Luke told me, they're called wrappers with a W. They're like basically servers, like copy servers of the original GoAnimate software, like hosted on other websites for people to use for free. And Peter, you had an explanation for what a wrapper is.
Yeah, so in software, essentially a wrapper is a container for a software package that serves to let it run in another software environment. So occasionally, for example, on mobile, you would have, say, a website, you would have an app that would be a wrapper for a website. So it's not actually an app unto itself, it's merely a stripped down web view of a specific website with no URL bar. And so you'd have like a Facebook wrapper app. Or, for example, Discord itself is a wrapper for the Discord website. So when you're logging on to Discord as an application, it's genuinely the exact same entity as the Discord website. It's just hosted into the form of an application.
It's sort of like what Flash was for the original GoAnimate, I think.
Yeah, that's a good
right.
way. In a sense, you're right, yes. GoAnimate was wrapped in Flash. Yeah,
Hell yeah.
Exactly. I remember, for example, on mobile, you would get browsers that would include Flash Player, because for the longest time, Flash did not run on mobile devices, even though it ran on the Nintendo Wii's internet channel.
Right.
So you couldn't get your Flash to run on your Android phone or your iPhone without installing basically a wrapped browser. And so that's another common use case for them.
I see.
Is to get a software running where it shouldn't run.
So with these wrappers, they were eventually able to create an offline version of this that's available for free to install on GitHub. And I installed it and messed around with it, and that's, how I was able to mess around with the software. Of course, it's not actually the, quote, official GoAnimate software, but it basically works the same way. It's just called something different now. And I think, as Luke put it, it's like there's not really been that much action by Beyond now to try to, stop this because, why would they? I think he said it best. It's a good way of keeping the GoAnimate community, off their backs and, further distancing themselves from it.
Exactly.
Yes, and they do still have a lot of ire towards Alvin Hung.
Yes, and, and I talked about that with Luke in the interview as well.
Yes.
Talks a lot more about these rappers as well.
The technicalities of it in the interview, which we will post hopefully soon after.
Yes, the interview is going to be posted. I don't know if I said it specifically, but it is going to be posted.
Yes.
But yeah, so that's how the GoAnimate community is still alive and well and continuing to make content with this now Rapper Offline software that is a rip of the original GoAnimate software for download for free. And you know, I found on the TV tropes page for GoAnimate, when it was talking about this rapper stuff, because it was mentioned there, that's how I learned about it, that it has, quote, created an interesting phenomenon where some users have stayed with the original site and used the new themes, while others have gone with the new program to recapture the past. But now after talking to, I mean, I've definitely seen a few, like, Go animators, like, who use Vyond now, but the vast majority of them definitely, I think, use the Rapper software now. Like, that's the impression I had from talking to Luke. But in that regard, it reminds me of old school RuneScape and RuneScape, how it's like they both sort of coexist now, but one is like a version of the older game revamped, basically.
Yeah, like WoW Classic versus Retail WoW.
Yeah, so it reminds me of that like a lot with what happened to this.
It makes a lot of sense.
And just like with old school RuneScape to RuneScape, I think Rapper Offline is much more popular now than the Vyond software, respectively.
I do see Vyond-specific channels pop up, though. So apparently the original software users are still kicking. Just...
They must have the richest parents. That shit is so overpriced.
I know, it's so expensive. It could be adults. We don't know. It's very difficult to tell with the humor.
That's another thing. I did talk about that with GoTube as well, that it's so difficult to tell if these videos are meant to be ironic or not. And, you know, I guess I won't say too much on that because he talks about it in the interview, but he basically concluded that a good way to tell, a good indicator of whether it's ironic or not is...
the typing style.
Yeah, the typing style with, like, proper grammar or, like, broken English in the video.
The typing style into the text-to-speech specifically, so that the text-to-speech interprets the spelling and grammar more correctly. That makes sense.
I think also the comments, I'm pretty sure he said. The actual, like, interaction with people.
That's fair as well. It's kind of funny to think that the more ironic case is the more professionally written style in this community.
It does seem that way.
Sometimes you'd expect, in most communities, that ironic content would be deliberately misspelled or lower quality on purpose, you know?
Right, of course. Like the very typical, like, all lowercase, no punctuation typing.
Exactly.
I remember, again, back when I made, like, those slideshow movies and kid pics, the text-to-speech would, like, make it be pronounced weirdly. Like, the word the would be pronounced as the sometimes. So I had to, there was a thing you could do to, like, manually change how it pronounced certain words, though, so that's what I did. But, yeah, I guess, like, you would see that in GoAnimate as well. Like,
yeah.
But then sometimes it's also, like, sometimes they deliberately, you know, leave it sounding, like, weird. Like, it's become kind of like a running gag in a lot of the Caillou Gets Grounded videos, because the default way, from what I can tell, that GoAnimate pronounces his name is not Caillou, it's Caillou.
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 And so there was one video I saw where it was a behavior card day video. I think it was the one I showed you guys, actually, that ended with, it was like the last card, the dead meat card, and the dead meat card, for context, is like the worst card you can get in the behavior card videos, where it's like you get the ultimate punishment, basically. It's like the last card goes to Caillou, and then Caillou's there like, what? No, that's impossible, or something. And then Rosie's like, Rosie, his sister, for context, who appears in these videos as well. So then Rosie says...
someone's OC, Rosie.
So Rosie says, not Caillou, Caillou. And you see next to the GoAnimate Caillou, again with the Ship of Theseus analogy, you see like a cutout of Caillou from the TV show.
Oh, okay, wait. So the idea is that Caillou is the GoAnimate character and Caillou is the actual show?
At least for this one video.
That's really good.
Yeah.
That's like SpongeBob versus Doodlebob type of thing.
Yeah, or like do you guys remember SpongeBob?
Spengebob.
Yeah, Spengebob.
Yeah.
Oh god, yeah.
Spengebob. Yeah. Oh man, all those hyper distorted SpongeBobs were the funniest thing when I was a kid.
I still remember that song from that one video. There was a song from one really popular Spengebob like compilation video, just a bunch of pictures of the cursed like SpongeBob fan art, and there was this song that was like do 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 do.
You'll have to link that.
Sure.
To us. I haven't seen it, but man, I remember it was like that was one of the first times I realized, oh, I can use the internet to make fun of things.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I wonder, I have to wonder, I bet a lot of people who get into GoAnimate, especially as kids, like, I bet a lot of kids who get into GoAnimate see it as that as well. Like, that may be their point of realizing they can use the internet to make fun of things.
It makes a lot of sense to me. It's like, why else would you do it? Like, the internet is for entertainment.
Yeah,
you know?
I said as much in my interview with Luke that I think if I had been a little younger when I learned about GoAnimate, I probably would have been right there making GoAnimate videos myself.
Yep, makes sense to me.
I find myself wondering if there's any potential for GoAnimate to be used to create, like, more serious content. You know, even though it does lend itself very well to humor, very specific types of humor, I find myself wondering what could you do with it seriously. There was one GoAnimate series that came to mind that was completely removed, actually, from... It's not a Caillou video. It's like, it has nothing to do with that fandom really whatsoever. It's just a video that just so happened to be made in the GoAnimate software. Or it's a series of videos and a saga called Large Father and Small Son. So... So it is still humorous at its core, right? It's still like a funny video. It's like the default father character model, like scaled up sort of too big, and the default like teenage boy character model scaled like smaller, and sort of like this drama that goes on between them. And it's like a multi-part video series created by Seinfeld Spitstein, who's the guy who created Jimmy Neutron Happy Family Happy Hour. Fun fact.
Oh, wow. Oh, that guy! Is that the same guy who did Rat Boy Genius?
It might have been. But so, you know, even though it's like very clearly a funny video playing into like the sort of like bizarreness of GoAnimate, it is like weirdly emotional at times, and the comments reflect as much. Like the whole comment section is filled with people saying like, you know, it's like only Seinfeld Spitstein could like make a GoAnimate video so emotional, or like it's weirdly endearing, and I'm like
that's funny,
genuinely hooked on the story. So yeah, I think there is potential for it as like, you know, a medium to create more serious, heavy-handed content. I think there's always going to be a humorous edge just because of like how it looks. It's difficult to separate that, but like I think there's a lot more that could be done with GoAnimate is what I'm getting at, and I would love to see like more people try to do stuff like that.
It's a fair point. I think that it does have room to grow.
Exactly.
It strikes me as I feel like music genres tend to go through the same sort of cycle, where as a music genre develops, it becomes more story-focused, and you get more songs that aren't starring the singer as the main character, but feature, say, a fictional character being sung by the singer. Like, no one is pretending that Through the Fire and the Flames by Dragon Force is actually about the band, for example. Just as, you know, Zager and Evans aren't traveling to the year 2525. I feel like, say, rap is going in that direction as well, including not only because it's more emotional, but you start to see more rappers who are doing sort of what I would think of as second-person rap, where the song is from the perspective of a character. And of course, we're 2 decades on from Stan. But I think it is generally true of any medium that, as with The Simpsons developing, as with the GoAnimate Caillou people going multiple levels removed from the original source material, maybe it's just an easy prediction to make that the genre gets more complex over time, and more about involved stories. And I open it because that shows you the strengths of the medium. What we were just talking before this about these horrible, really funny WebM exploit memes, where it can resize the frame width and height of the WebM in Discord dynamically as it's playing. The first time you see this, it blows your goddamn mind.
It's so jarring.
It's like, how is it doing this? Exactly. It's like, it's not supposed to do this. It's very clearly an exploit of the format. The WebM is one of the most broken video formats possible, particularly in congruence with Discord as a delivery medium. But it really shows that you can take advantage of the medium itself, like with the Impossible Quiz, right-clicking on the Flash file and using the right-click menu as a bridge to get from one point to another. Using the strengths of the medium to the advantage of the message, I think, is a phenomenal direction for GoAnimate to go, just as well as any other genre.
I would love to see if like there are any exploits sort of in a similar set. I mean, I guess you couldn't really do that though, because like you can't like export files. There's not like a GoAnimate file format
.ga.
Yeah, there's nothing like that, but it would be funny if there were like some specific like weird glitches like that you could exploit in GoAnimate.
I'm thinking it could be something as simple as, well, you remember how in Homestar Runner, like, there's the virus episode where Strongbad leaps at Homestar, and he leaps out of the frame of the Flash file, and then he's outside of the bounds of the world, basically. I'm wondering if there's exploits you could do comparable to that, or, say, figuring out a way to have characters talk over each other, like with the John Madden voice glitch. I think that exploits in the software are still yet to be found. Like, what if you could find a way to run two animations at the same time on the same character? How would they combine? What would happen?
And, it's also, like, that brings up another good point that, like, a lot of Go animators, especially the more, like, sort of professional ones, the ones who, like, really know what they're doing, they'll use, like, other software. Like, I can tell that it's not all being made in GoAnimate for some of these videos. It's very clearly, like, I'm like, okay, it's like, I see what they're doing, and I'm very doubtful that GoAnimate actually is able to do that natively.
Exactly.
Outside intervention, yeah.
Multimedia.
Exactly. But I don't see that as a bad thing.
No, not at all. I think it's great. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I think it's great.
And I think exploits will eventually be uncovered as people push the boundaries of the medium itself and they try to, mess around with the software. I think it would be really funny if people started finding glitches that result in unintended behavior.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Be unintended behavior card day. So stupid.
It's great. No, yeah, that's great. Glitch compilation. Caillou gets glitched.
Caillou, how dare you cause glitches in GoAnimate? You are grounded for...
-1 years.
I guess I'll say that just when I look at GoAnimate, or now Wrapper Offline as it's called, I see potential. I see the potential for creation, like, as with any other medium. I see opportunities for people to tell the stories they want to tell, to express themselves, and I see its potential as well to further interest people in learning other kinds of animation, if they so wish. Right, like I came across a few Go animators who actually had begun dabbling in like other types of animation, like actually drawing and like themselves and animating it themselves. I think that's really cool. I think it's really cool that it can like lead people to that. But even in the event that it doesn't, I think it's still awesome that they have GoAnimate as a resource to express themselves. So I guess I'll just say, like, GoAnimate's a very acquired taste. A lot of people will probably find it kind of juvenile and tedious and not that enjoyable. But GoAnimate is nonetheless a force to be reckoned with, and overall I'm glad it exists because at the end of the day I think most of these videos do embody that playful spirit of creation for creation's sake.
You're here.
Agreed.
Thank you so much, Peter and Izzy, for joining me in today's episode, and it was a pleasure having you guys here.
Thank you, Vela.
Pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Fictron. Be sure to like and subscribe to the Fictron YouTube channel. Also, check out the official Fictron website at altficportal.wixsite.com/Fictron. That's altficportal.wixsite.com/Fictron. And be sure to follow us on Twitter at altficportal. You can reach me on Twitter at serrated_M, Izzy at Tombstone, and PDB at peterdanielberg.com. Links and relevant media will be in the description. And a huge thanks to Luke, aka GoTube, for providing us some much needed information on GoAnimate. Be sure to check out his channels in the description and stay tuned for my direct interview with him tomorrow. Thank you all for listening, and we'll see you next time. No, don't touch that! Okay, that's gonna be where it turns to GoAnimate.
Okay.
Sweet.
You like anime?